Before we leave the topic of real and nominal, let's look at real and nominal income. So here we have the income of different provinces in Canada in 1928, 1933, and 2019. This is nominal income. So this is based on the prices in the period in which we're looking at. So 1928 prices, 1928 income. All right, let's look at the difference. Let's look at Alberta. So if you lived in 1928 in Alberta, your income would have been $548 for the entire year. Okay. In 1933, the average income in Alberta was $212. Why? What happened? Here you can see the Great Depression. So remember, people are being laid off. So a lot of people had zero income. Other people got less hours. And so if you lived during the Great Depression in Alberta, you made $212 for the entire year. Can you live off of $212? Well, it's hard for us to figure that out just based on that number 212, because how much did things cost then? Maybe things were just so much cheaper that $212 for the entire year was no big deal. In order for us to understand if things were really that bad in 1933, we need to convert that $212 nominal income into real income. That is, we need to adjust for inflation. So what we want to do is compare it to the average income in 2019. Right now, the average income in 2019 in Alberta is just over $45,000. So if we can convert that $212 from 1933 into 2019 dollars, we can then see how much that would have been today. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we need to understand the difference between nominal income and real income. So nominal income, we said, was the dollar value of that year in the income. And real income, we're adjusting for inflation so that we can really look at purchasing power, what you can get for your money. The idea here is that if nominal income went up by 30% and inflation, prices went up 30%, what has happened to your buying power, to your real income? Are you better off? Are you worse off? Well, if income went up 30% and inflation went up 30%, your buying power, your real income, has not changed. You can't get any more than before. You can't get any less than before. So this is an important thing to note, because when we look at our inflation, remember that Canada actively uses monetary policy to keep inflation between 1% and 3%. So on average, each year, prices are going up 2%. Which means when you're negotiating a pay raise, you're negotiating your nominal income. How much do you need your income to go up so that your buying power, your real income, is either staying the same, so you can get the same stuff and afford the same expenses that you currently do, or you could actually buy more than before. Well, if inflation's going to be 2%, then you probably want your nominal income to do what? Go up by more than 2%. So if you're negotiating a wage increase, you probably want it to go up more than 2% so that your real income, your purchasing power, what you can get with your money, goes further. So we'll look in a moment in terms of how we've been doing in Canada in terms of our income keeping up with inflation. But let's look first at how we can find that real income. So to find real income, here we have a formula. So it's our real income for year B in A dollars is equal to nominal income in year B divided by the price index in year B times the price index in year A. Okay, that formula sounds hard and confusing. How will I remember what to do? Okay, well, let's think about it this way. I want to take this $548 from 1928, and I want to convert it. Oops, this should say 2019 dollars. All right, I want to convert it into 2019 dollars. So I'm going to take my nominal income of $548, and I'm going to need to take out the inflation from that same period. So I'm going to take my 548 and I'm going to divide by the CPI in that time period. And then what I want to do is add the inflation for the 2019 period that I want to convert the 548 into. So 548 divide by the CPI from that same year times the CPI. In this case, if we're looking at 2019, 136. Okay, so let's pull out our calculator. 548 divided by 9.1. Get a number there. Times 136. Oops, 136. All right, so if in 1928 you were making $548, in 2019 that would be the equivalent of making $8,189.89 if you want to include the cents. Or we could round that to $81.90. Okay. Let's do 1933. So we said, what? $212 for the entire year. How much is that in 2019 dollars? So what do? We take our 212 divided by the CPI in that year times CPI for the year you want to convert it into. So we want to know 2019 dollars. So we're going to multiply times 136. Pop that into our calculator. 212 divided by 7.1. Okay, and then multiply times 136. What was that number? 4,060.85. So if you lived during the Great Depression, your average income, $212 for the year. That would be the equivalent of making $4,000 now. Can you live off of $4,000 now? So we can see how bad it was during the Great Depression when you recognize that the average income right now is $45,000, and we often have two earners in our family just to pay the bills, right? So we have people making $45,000, two people making $45,000, so a good $90,000 to cover a lot of family expenses. In comparison, in the 1930s, you're looking at families that are earning $4,000 for the whole year, right? So 10% of what you're making now, can you live off of that? All right, so we had asked the question a couple minutes ago of how are we doing now? Well, obviously, since 1933, our income has gone up. Our buying power, our real income. We can afford more goods and services than they could in 1933. What about lately? How are we doing in terms of income increases, so nominal income increases, to keep up with inflation? In other words, what's happening to our real income or buying power? It's often a joke that our wages are not keeping up with inflation, right? So here's some clips from Dilbert. Now there's mathematical certainty that no matter how hard you work, inflation will make you poor. So is our real income going down? Is our nominal income not increasing as much as inflation? Well, here's the data for Canada. The orange is inflation. The blue is the average earnings. And so when the blue is above the orange, then our pay increases are higher than the inflation. So nominal income goes up more than price increases. So real income is increasing. But notice how these kind of intertwine. inflation goes up, and so the next year you get a pay raise that kind of compensates for that inflation. So if we look then at what's been happening with real wages, and this is a little bit older graph here, that our real wages have been somewhat stagnant, not decreasing, but not increasing as much either. So our wages in Canada basically just keep up with inflation on average. This is actually better than what we see in like the US, where their wages have not been keeping up with inflation. But we also don't see huge increases in our buying power either.